What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Associate Editor Brian Wagner. This week, my guest is Marc Caruso. I almost said host because I know you do your own show. What's going on, Marc?
How you doing, Brian? Great to see you, my friend.
Doing good. Good to see you as well. It's been a while. I've seen you since one of the Florida trips I made this year. It's about that time of the year where everything just literally runs together in the racing world, right?
Yeah, you got that right.
You do so many events, you do so much, and people will be like, oh, back in December, and you're sitting there thinking, oh wow, that was that was a little while ago. Or they could say, oh, last month. You're like, wait, that was just last month? I thought that was last year.
I know it does. It feels like last year we were down in Orlando for Wes Buck's race there, and the Gator Nationals. That seems like an eternity ago, but it was just this past winter.
Yeah, that exactly. That's what it was. It seems like it was an eternity ago. It's like, wow, that was not that long ago. And it's you forget sometimes how many miles you rack up either air or on the road after a while, right?
Oh yeah. We're actually off to stop. Well, if you count the Pro Stars race that they just had in Virginia, we're off to stop number 8 on the PDRA. Seems like just yesterday we were down at Modern Racing getting Camry's seat poured, and here we are at stop 8.
Especially when you do a series kind of racing, you don't realize how quickly that starts to add up. And I know I've been there, done that before, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, it's almost Thanksgiving. How long we've been racing again?
I know, right? Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
And I guess that speaks volumes about what we do, is that it runs together like that. They say time flies when you're having fun. I mean, it really does.
That's a fact. And I've been doing it a long time, and I have yet to find anything more fun than drag race.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great dovetail into my first question. I try to do some fact checking and reading up on my guests beforehand to hit you with fun questions and whatnot. And I didn't realize you started out, as a sportsman racer in both the IHRA, NHRA, racked up national wins in both, which again, never underestimate or underscore winning a national event in a sportsman class. I know some people, they're just sportsman racers. I'm like, it's not easy, but
no.
Let's go back and let's look at that. Can you remember what it was like the first time going to the final round at a big show event? Because that's life-changing. It really is, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. And I'll tell you, I was IHRA sportsman racing. I'm going to show my age here a little bit. It was 21 years ago. Almost actually 21 years ago this month. It used to be the IHRA World Nationals used to be held at Norwalk Raceway Park the weekend before Indy every year. And in 2000, I was racing a class called Hot Rod. And that's actually where my nickname, the Rod Father, came from, because I was racing in the IHRA. They called them the Rod classes. Because there was Hot Rod, Super Rod, Quick Rod, which were the index classes. And that year there was I want to say there was 100. I can't remember exactly what it was. I want to say, for some reason, 108 is sticking in my brain. 108 entries, and it might have actually been more than that. Qualified number 2 and went on to win the race. It was a 7-round race, which back then was unheard of. Nowadays, all those big bracket races are all that. But yeah, it was a 7-round race. And that was my first national event when it was at Norwalk Raceway Park. And it was in IHRA. Yep. It was pretty, it was a long, grueling weekend. I can tell you that. 7 rounds that's a lot of rounds between qualifying and eliminations in the pro categories. That's about what you get is 7 rounds.
And that's what's cool about that is, 21 years ago, I was still in college. And even before that, I remember going to Norwalk back in the day when it was still IHRA. And it's crazy that, you go to what that track used to be. And then I was just there for the night under fire to see what it is now. Is amazing, but I could only imagine back then racing, there weren't as many technological advancements, and to win in the sportsman ranks, I mean, you absolutely had to earn it.
Oh yeah. It was a whole different ball game back then. the tight packages that you see today, you didn't see them as much back then. And, it was, there was a small group of people that really understood, driving the finish line and holding some numbers and all those things you hear them talking about today when it comes down to bracket racing or class racing. But there was that group was very small that understood it back then. So, the people that really understood it were able to take advantage of it and get some wins. But nowadays it's everybody's got pretty much the same technology in their cars. And everybody has the access to knowing, understanding, driving both ends of the track and holding numbers and all that. But there was a lot that went into it. I remember one time, and if anybody follows any kind of sportsman racing, they'll be familiar with the name Dan Fletcher. But I can remember one time, I can't remember what racetrack it was at, but I remember seeing Dan Fletcher. They used to have those portable wind meters so you could see what the wind was. And I remember coming out of my motorhome and seeing Dan about half track where the bleachers ended, and he was getting the wind reading there to understand the difference of the wind beyond the bleachers versus what it was at the starting line. I mean, and that's the kind of stuff, and when a guy's trying to earn his living, he needs to do those things. So that's the kind of grueling stuff that goes on in those sportsman categories to try and turn on a wind light.
And you mentioned Dan Fletcher, and you talk about someone there that, is such he is the John Force of sportsman racers, hands down.
Absolutely.
That dude has won, I think, in every NHRA sportsman class. And to say he's dominated is an understatement. That dude is he's on a different level. It's funny, you talk to him now and he talks about how I'm slowing down. But at the same time, his intensity level is about 8 times greater than people half his age. It's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
With your experience, sportsman racing, we'll say at a high level, because again, winning a national event and chasing points is not an easy task. Is that something that's required even at that level, is to have that kind of drive and intensity if you want to consistently win?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of stuff that rolled over for me, I'd say probably one of the biggest things that rolled over for me when I got into pro mod racing was just trying to be consistent, which, the tuners really appreciate, being consistent on your burnout, being consistent on the way that you stage the car. Those type of things make a big difference in the professional category. And you're really trying to hone in on those things on the sportsman end, and a lot of the professional guys didn't really understand that or don't understand that. But those things make a huge difference. You accidentally in qualifying, put your car in a little deeper than the crew chief wants you to, and he's not going to be real happy with you. But on race day they may be okay with it, but when it comes to quality, they really want to see you be very, very consistent on the burnouts, staging the car. And like I said, all those things for me came from sportsmen, and I was able, to carry that on. And I know, the crew chiefs that I worked with in my time definitely noticed and appreciated, that.
That actually kind of leads me to a different question. I already know the answer to this, but I want to see if I can get you to say it. Now, you talk about consistency, and in pro mod, I don't think a lot of people understand what that really means. And that, you are trying to make sure that car is the same every run after run. What are some of the things that you're looking at as a driver? Because, everybody's got their routines. You're going to do your burnout the same way. I'm imagining stuff like that. But once that's done, what are you looking at to make sure you keep it consistent run after run?
Well, one of the big things for me was just, the way that I staged the car. You always see the guy up front bringing you in to where you're just about, to turn on that top bulb. And, once I would do that, I was very, very methodical that I barely just turned on that second bulb. And for me, it was a little bit of gas and just ever so slightly pumping that brake pedal. So that thing just literally quarter inch at a time, if not less, to just barely flicker and keep that bottom bulb on. And then, after that, in pro mod, I haven't had the opportunity, and it doesn't look like I'm going to have the opportunity because they switched the rule back, but they implemented, the manual shifting there for a moment. But for as long as I've been involved in pro mod, there's been auto shifters. So we really haven't had to be much more consistent other than leaving the starting line very consistent. And then the second was, getting the chutes out, just enough time where you're kind of letting some of that weight out as you're going through the finish line. That was always something that I tried to do very consistently as well, except for one time in Bristol, it didn't work out real well. But other than that.
And the other thing I was wondering too is, I know in bracket racing, index racing, there's certain things like, your engine temperature, oil temperature, and RPMs, that all has to remain the same too. And that's something you guys have to do with these pro mods as well, right? Because it's one of the things that I've always, it never clicked me. I didn't know that you'll hear guys whapping the throttle sometimes. They're not doing that just to have a good time. There's a purpose behind that at the starting line, isn't there?
Yeah, some of the guys have that in their routine. I wasn't one of them. So a lot of those injector hats are very finicky, and if you don't have them just right, they will creep on you, and you'll hear them. Most crew chiefs don't want the car to sound that way. They wanted a nice, clean idle. And Lee White always gave me a good, clean idle, so I never really had to. And really, the only gauge that was in my car was just an oil pressure gauge. There wasn't any RPM gauge or that was the only gauge in my car was an oil temperature. So as long as it had oil pressure and parts and pieces weren't flying off of it, I was letting go to the button and driving her to the finish line.
The old Bill Lutz train of thought. I've talked to him before. That's what he said. He said literally, he goes, he didn't have a gauge. He just had a dummy light. He said foot through the floor. As long as that light wasn't on, and like you said, there was no smoke. Didn't care about anything else, which I didn't like. It kind of took me back at first. And then on the other side of things, you hear some of the guys like they're watching, like said, engine temperature and even like oil temperature and stuff like that. And they're whapping that throttle at the line to make sure that they're at like that absolute target temperature that they need for repeatability. And I guess a lot of people might have that misconception. All these pro mods, they just get up there and let go of the button. No, you want your data to all be in line so you can make the adjustments you need between rounds and so on.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you're doing well in the sportsman racing and whatnot. You started to step up to a top sportsman and then pro mod. Why did you decide to kind of make that ascension out of the index classes? Because there's a lot of guys like, Dan Fletcher are happy to live there and do well. But, I always find it interesting. Why did you decide to, crank up the speed and the dollars amount spent?
I blame it all on my father, AKA Papa Joe. Yeah. So, I mean, I at one point, I had a super gas car, I had a super comp car. I was running around running, 2 cars at NHRA events. And, but my father growing up always had top sportsman cars and then even got into pro modified. He had some health issues early on in life that stopped him from being a driver. And at that time, he had a very good friend of his, Mike Cusimano, driving all his top sportsman cars, and they went pro mod racing together. And I was coming up as a kid, in the IHRA days, running hot rod and super rod, and then top dragster a little bit. And then I went NHRA, super gas and super comp. And then, Then I actually got out of racing for about 3 years. I had three of my children, two of my children and one of my stepdaughters, all in junior dragsters at one time. So
time consuming.
yes. So, I was driving around with a stacker trailer full of junior dragsters in it. And at that time, there was about a 2-year period where my father had sold everything and he was out of racing. And we started going to some ADRL races with the kids, with the junior dragsters. And about the second year of doing that, my father was like, what do you think? He goes, we're already coming to these. What do you think we get a top sportsman car? And I said, yeah, that probably wouldn't be a bad deal. I wouldn't mind getting into a top sportsman car. So we started looking, and that's when we got that white Cobalt, which had 3 stages of nitrous on it. And then that was the year that the ADRL went bust. And then there was the PDRA and the XDRL and the ADRL and all these other different things. And it was kind of goofy. So ended up just going top sportsman racing back in NHRA again. And then I would take the kids locally to junior drag racing. And then about a year later, my daughter continued and went into a big car. She went down to Frank Holly's and got licensed. And then I did about 3 years with the white Cobalt top sportsman racing. And we were at a Click 8 deal in Lancaster, Dragway in Buffalo. It was the end of the season. And I looked over and my father was standing at the back of the car with Mike Janis, and they were talking. And as I walked up, Mike Janis said, well, congratulations. And I didn't know what he was congratulating me for.
Huh?
And I said, yeah. I says, well, what's that? He says, you and your father just bought my Pro Mod car. I said, we did?
Yeah.
So, so that's kind of how that, and actually funny, the crazy part about that is when we bought it, we initially planned to go top sportsman racing with it. And even went down to, at the time, IHRA was still running a divisional / sportsman national in Immokalee, Florida. I don't know if you've ever been to Immokalee drag strip.
I have not, but I've heard of it.
It's very, very small. It's the Hesters are awesome that own that track. Great people. But it's no Z-Max. Okay.
It's got character. It's got character.
Yeah. So I think I still hold the track record down there. We went down there to top sportsman race, and I went and this was back in 2015, I think. And I went like a 383 or something. I went something crazy, and people were like, are you out of your stinking mind? So we left there and we went to Gainesville for the divisional race, the Baby Gators, and ended up going, we were trying to go like a 630 maybe. And we went I think we went like a 613. And so we got through that race and kind of decided, you know what, we probably can't slow this thing down enough to top sportsman race. And we ended up at Rockingham for a PDRA race. It was our very first one that we went to, and ran Pro Boost there and qualified fairly well. I think we qualified like 9th or 10th and made it to the semis. And my stepdaughter ended up winning the bracket race there that weekend in her dragster. And so we had a lot of fun, and needless to say, we never turned back. We went full bore into PDRA racing, and it's been a great deal. And then I want to say in 2018, Wes Buck invited us out to Denver for the World Series of Pro Mod. And at that point, I had not quarter mile pro mod raced yet. And actually we were in our new car. We bought Todd Tutaro's 69 Camaro, and put a brand new Noonan 4.9 in it and decided to drive all the way out to Denver and see what we could do.
Always seems like a good idea.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Whatever it takes, you know? And it was funny because while we were there, my father had asked Lee White, you know, after about 3-4 days of testing, and he goes, "So what do you think?" He goes, "You think we got something that we can run with these NHRA guys?" And Lee was like, "Well, how hard could it be?" So, you know, we ended up running well out there, and got a call from, at the time it was Danny Rowe was running the RPM, the Real Pro Mod series within the NHRA, and he invited us to go out to Indy, and we went out to Indy, and that was in 2018. That was my very first NHRA Pro Modified race, and we had a blast. And I think we went to 1 or 2 more that year. That's kind of all steamrolled from there.
Now, I want to get some more of your thoughts on pro mod racing, but first we have to pause for a brief commercial interlude here on the Dragzine Podcast. Moser Engineering has been racing across 5 decades and through 3 generations of family. We have also been supporting sportsman ranks since the beginning with our lightning fast 2-day turnaround time. Everything we make, from axles, rear ends, suspension, brakes, and more, are made right here in the USA with one goal in mind: so you can win. To learn more, check us out online at moserengineering.com. All right, we're back. So you started to steamroll into pro mod, and I talked to a lot of racers on this show, and surprisingly enough, nitro racers and others are terrified of pro mods. A nitro racer will say, "I would never drive one of those." What do you enjoy about driving one of these monsters?
Well, you know, for the longest time, you know, like anything, why anybody drag races initially is because they have the need for speed, right? I mean, there's nothing like, you know, letting go of that button and getting put, you know, to the back of the seat there, and then just charging. They are a handful. You know, I have driven dragsters. I've driven all sorts of doors cars. Pro mods, like, you don't know what could happen from the minute you do the burnout to the minute you leave the starting line till 8th mile when it's a little bit out of the groove and you stayed in it just a hair too long, to going through the finish line and, you know, pulling the chutes and the ass end of the car is a foot off the ground. You know, they're just extremely unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen, but they're just a lot of fun to drive. I don't know.
You know, it harkens back to why guys like, you know, fireworks and tequila, because they're dangerous. Yep. You don't know what's going to come of it. And to me, it's amazing watching pro mods. And they've been around for a long time, but they're still not refined, if you know what I mean. Like, they're refined, but they're still edgy. Yeah. I think you definitely summed that up. You don't know what these cars are going to do at any one, like a car that you will see someone that's consistently going down the track at any one time. That driver's still thinking in the back of his mind every time he lets go of the button, what are you going to do this time? And then, you know, you pull the grenade, right?
Absolutely. 1 bazillion %. You know, I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, you know, my daughter has been after me to get in our pro mod car. And she'll razz me every so often and be, you know, what the heck? I've been quicker and faster than you. You know, and she's right. She has. However, she did it in a, you know, dragster that was 250 something inches long. It's a whole different ball game, a completely different ball game. You know, the wheelbase makes all the difference in the world. And the suspension makes all the difference in the world. You know, those dragsters are hardtails, the wheelbase is twice, more than twice of what a pro mod car is. And that's like you said, a lot of these nitro guys don't want to get in a pro mod. Well, that's why. They are a handful, and they will humble. I don't care how great of a racer you are, you could be humbled at any given moment by a pro mod car. And like I said, that's why I said from the burnout to the finish line, because I've seen give you a perfect example, Jeffrey Barker, great racer, great. I would let him get in any one of my race cars at any given time. He had an incident where the car got away from him and he took out the tree on a burnout. It's possible, and it could happen to any one of us. I'm sorry, I had a call come in. I don't know if that black
it popped up for a second. It happens.
I apologize. Actually, that was my daughter. She knew I was talking about her driving a pro mod. She probably got excited. But anyways, yeah, I mean, it's, there's a perfect example. I mean, you look at guys like Todd Tutteros, Stevie Jackson, the list goes on. Steve Matusik, all great racers, have all wrecked race cars. You do this long enough, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
It's when and how bad.
They're animals. They are absolute animals. So I mean, you look at it's just, and some of it, yes, sometimes could have been avoided, but you know what? We're race car drivers. We want to get to the finish line, and sometimes we make not the greatest choices when we're inside those race cars. That's part of the gig,
I saw a dude, I forget the racer's name, at the Night Under Fire. One pass, the car wanted to really start climbing the bars. He pedaled it real fast, settled back down, took out. The next round, it tried to do the same thing. He was behind a little bit, I think. He pedaled it. It didn't really settle down. He was back in it to win it. And I whipped my camera around. I swear I saw 3 tires off the ground on that car. And I'm thinking, this dude's about to go for the kind of ride that nobody wants to go for in one of these cars. Because 2 wheels off the ground towards the top end is bad. But when you've got all 3 off the ground, that's not where you want to be.
Nope. And I've been there and done it. There's footage of it. If you look deep enough in YouTube, you'll find it. And sometimes I've been on the good end of that, and I've been on the bad end of it. It's a fine line that racers walk. And a real good racer will tell you that was my fault. I went too far. It went, I should have lifted and didn't. So that's part of the gig. You're going to have it. And it's just unfortunate that it's so expensive to fix these damn things after we do stupid shit.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah. That's the downside is it's all fun and games till you got to call up the chassis guy. And, if he has a boat, he's thinking about, I'm going to get another boat out of this deal. This ain't going to be cheap. And I'm going to name this one after this driver. And,
you got that right.
And what's it like when do you have time to, because I know a lot of times when you start going fast enough, it starts slowing down. Have you been to that point where it starts slowing down where you're like, all right, this could end badly, I need to lay off it? Or do you just go off instinct and go?
Yeah. So I've been in both situations. My last wreck was in Darlington last summer. And that one, it just was instantaneous. Like the car got upset in a spot that had never got upset before. The car showed no sign. There was no wiggle, there was no shake, there was no nothing. It just took the tire off before I could react, and the car was sideways and up on one tire. Now that one, it happened like within the first 100 foot of the racetrack. I've played it over in my head a bazillion times. I don't really think there was anything different that I could have done that would have changed the outcome of that. A lot of times, I would say from the 8th mile on, you're just kind of holding on and you're along for the ride, and you do have a lot more time to kind of decipher things. 8th mile, 3.7 seconds happens awfully fast. And at 200 miles an hour, there's a lot of times it's just, you almost have to train yourself to know when enough is enough. And that's difficult. It is, especially when it's eliminations and the adrenaline's going. I was really good about it in qualifying. I would say I was probably 50-50 in eliminations.
As most racers are.
Yeah, you just don't want to lose. But the reality of it is these things are so quick, so fast, so expensive. You not only are you taking a chance of hurting yourself, but you're taking a chance of hurting somebody else. And most of the times we're out here racing for 10, 25 grand in a $300,000 race car. So it's a fine line to walk.
I've noticed a lot of times too, it seems like you mentioned stuff happening so quick in the first so many feet of the track. And I've seen a lot of times where I think Mr. Horde down at the Wes's race, tire shake. Tire shake, I think, is the ultimate enemy of a pro mod racer, because most of the time you'll see a lot of guys, tire shake is something you can drive through until it's like F5 tornado level tire shake. And it probably does some pretty gnarly stuff. Have you experienced that? What's that like to be inside one of these cars when they're trying to cut a sub, 0.9 second, 60 foot, and those tires start trying to do basketball crossover dribbles?
Yeah, I mean, I actually had one so violent one time it broke a wishbone.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the most violent ones I had ever experienced. And honestly, I didn't realize how much damage I was doing to my back with that tire shake until I actually had the accident in Bristol and broke my back. And then I saw things that had happened. They were able to show me, well, this is from today. This is from, years of, whatever. So that tire shake can be as much as a little wiggle, where you're like, okay, it's going to be okay. And it'll kind of get through it, to it multiplies. And like you said, the car will become like a basketball. And it's violent enough where I've had doors come off. Like I said, I broke a wishbone. And that's something, the more laps you make, you can't, you not only have to have great reaction time on the tree, but you have to have great reaction time in the car to be a really, really good racer. You need to know where that line is of where it's not going to drive through the tire shake, and it's going to become so violent that a lot of nasty things are going to happen. So yeah, that's something that unfortunately it takes experience and laps to figure out. Some people don't ever figure it out, and that's why you see some of the violent stuff that you see out there.
Yeah, because I mean, tire shake and anything that happens in that first, we'll say 100 feet, when that car starts to get upset and it's accelerating towards terminal velocity, you don't have a long time or a big window to right the ship, because before you realize you're in trouble, you're already facing the wrong wall. And at that point,
absolutely,
it's luck whether you're going to save the car or not.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. It kind of cracks me up, when these guys do get all sideways and spinning around, and luckily the other guy made a great pass and they crashed so bad, but didn't crash.
Yeah.
Crashed without hitting anything, spinning around and start rolling down the racetrack. And, the fans start applauding. I'm thinking, they're applauding this dipshit. and really, he ought to have his competition license taken away, but you know what? I've been that guy, it's, but the fans get all excited about it. But the reality of it is thank God the one car went, or you were on a solo. I'll never forget one time I was in Memphis, Tennessee for a PDRA race, and I left the starting line, and that thing got so violent, not a shape. And thank God Tyler Miller at the time was racing Pro Boost with us. He couldn't start his car, because had he started his car and we left the starting line together, I would have T-boned him right in the driver's door. not proud of it, but that's, I was early on, and that was the first year of my Pro Boost career, and was willing to take a little bit more chances than I probably should have. And, that's how fast it happens. Like you just said, it's before you think you got it and you own it, you don't have it. You're sideways and facing walls you shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's never a good moment when you can read door sponsors on any vehicle, and I've seen points where I've read them on dragsters, and that takes a lot of effort to set a dragster that much, but I've seen it done. And as someone that is a racer myself in crouton cars, like you'll start seeing someone make a pass and it's like you're almost trying to coach them yourself. You're like, no, get out of it, stop. Do you find yourself doing that too, where you're like trying to like will someone to make the right decision?
Oh yeah. I've been on the starting line plenty of times. Sometimes it's my daughter, sometimes it's other racers. But yeah, absolutely. And it always, I will say this. I do believe it always looks worse outside the car than the driver believes it is. As a driver, we always say, well, it wasn't that bad in the car. Well, when you watch the video and you see it, you're like, well, it didn't seem that, but it doesn't. Just, for whatever reason, I don't know if just because you're the guy in control, you feel like you have more control than the person standing outside watching it. But yeah, I've had that conversation many a times.
It's not good when the crew chief shows up to pick you up at the top end and the first thing out of the mouth is, what were you thinking? That's not how you want the conversation to start, right?
Absolutely.
Now, on the flip side of that, let's talk about when you make that good run. What's that feel like from a driver's point of view? Because when you're on a rip. I mean, there's no two bits about it. When everything is going right. I could only imagine, what is that feeling like in a pro mod, busting down the track at 250 plus mile an hour and the that blower singing the songs of its people going through the top end?
Well, it's kind of funny because most of the quickest runs I've ever made were the most uneventful.
That's how you want it. Yeah. You want your race car passes and your flights to be uneventful.
Yeah. Some of the quickest and fastest runs I've ever made have been extremely uneventful. I will say probably one of the most fun cars that I ever drove. Lee White was tuning a car for some gentlemen that bought, he used to, Jason Scruggs. Yeah. Jason Scruggs sold his red Camaro RJ car. And Lee White set it up for some guys with a 5-speed Liberty lockup converter and a Noonan 4.9. Yeah. And I got to debut it down in Bradenton at one of the winter races. And it was actually one of my first 3.6 second passes. And I want to say it was at 208. And that was probably one of the most fun cars I drove, because it had the 5-speed in it and it had the lockup, which makes it feel like a 6-speed. And, and all that's going on, within 3.6 seconds. And that was a pretty wild ride. I really enjoyed driving that car that weekend.
You're earning your paycheck inside one of those cars for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's funny. I will find myself falling down the rabbit hole of watching vintage racing on YouTube of all kinds. And to me, watching old door car racers pull Linko levers, that is an art form. That is just something that I could never get tired of watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My father had a few cars with those levers, lightning rods.
Linko levers or clutchless transmissions, like you see the super stock Hemi cars. Love seeing those dudes sidestep that clutch and just, it looks like they're trying to rip that shifter out of the car. It's so, that looks like something, if I had lottery money, I don't want it.
It's funny you say that because my daughter is racing Pro Outlaw 632 this season in PDRA, and in preparation to go pro stock racing. And so it's got a clutch in it. It's got a 5-speed Blanco, but with a Liberty shifter. And I'll tell you what, that thing looks like so much fun to drive. I'm actually jealous. Like, I'm watching her drop the clutch, do the burnout with the, the Liberty shifter, and man, it just, her winding it up and putting it in the beams, and I'm actually kind of jealous.
Oh, yeah.
All I do is press a button, man, it to the floor, and let go of a button. I thought I was going to get to do some shifting, but they turned that rule around. So, but yeah, no, I actually am extremely jealous, and I'm hoping that maybe someday she'll let me get in her car, but I don't know. I always tell her no, she can't get in the pro mod, so I think it's probably slim to none chance.
You might have to pull the old dad veto card out on that one. Say, now listen, sometimes things just have to work this way, and just throw your seat in it and go. And I could imagine, it's always wild watching the pro stock racers with banging those gears like that, because that is just that's precision fighting right there. You have to be
absolutely
so in tune with that vehicle, because if you just barely miss anything during that entire pass, it's not going to perform how it wants. However, it's like comparing surgical tools, where the pro stock car is like a beautiful scalpel, and the pro mod is the loud pneumatic bone saw.
Absolutely, that's a great analogy.
and you're either, it's hard to be both, but most of the time you're either a scalpel or a bone saw kind of person, unless you're like Erica Enders, who might be able to do both, or Alex Laughlin. But most of the time, I think when you try to put a pro mod racer in a pro stock car, you're going to try to wrestle that thing a little bit too much, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've been going back and forth with the idea. I don't know. We'll see. You might just see me in one. You might just see me in one.
Yeah, you know what? And at that point, is it going to be an NHRA pro stocker, or are you going to do the mountain motor thing? Because I like mountain motors.
I like the mountain motor.
Scoops.
I like the mountain motor. And the NHRA is starting to pay a little bit of attention to the mountain motor cars. They're supposedly going to be in Brainerd. They're going to be in Charlotte. If I'll be honest with you, if I see NHRA show a little bit more interest in that mountain motor pro stock, do not rule out a 2-car Caruso family racing team.
And that's cool on many different levels, because there's just, for me, like, I love blower cars because they're angry, but there's something about big block cars, whether it's a big block NA car or a big block nitrous car, that they just sound a different level of angry. Like,
absolutely.
Big block NA cars are fine Scotch angry. Big block nitrous cars are Jack Daniels on college night angry.
I love it.
Which to me, I could go with either one. Like, it's
absolutely.
It's. Do you agree that when you hear one of those cars fire up, what it is, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
It's like a screw blown car, whether it's a alcohol funny car or a screw blown pro mod. When one of those cars is making a pass because it's screaming at all ends of the track.
Yep. Yeah. No, I love everything about them. I grew up, with mountain motor pro stock, first getting my feet wet and drag racing with the IHRA. So, to me, that's more natural than the 500 cubic inch. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the era of Bob Glidden and Warren Johnson and Lee Shepard and all that, very, very cool. But I was a Northeast IHRA guy, and that was, to me, was more normal, was the mountain motor pro stock.
And on that level too, NHRA and the mountain motor stuff, like extracting the horsepower out of those engines, the way that those guys do with those cars, and I'm sure you're seeing it with Camry's car, is like, it's really such an art form, those cars are, because you have to have everything right every pass.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and most of it's coming from ratio. It's not like you're just adding more boost or, changing jet sizes or, it's all in the ratio. So it's definitely a science, and that's pretty cool. That's really cool. I've definitely enjoyed my time, and Johnny Placino who's been kind of overseeing this whole deal with Camry and the Pro Outlaw 632. So we've been spending a lot of time in his pits too. Being around all the Mountain Motor Pro Stock guys and stuff, and it's been a fun season. It's been pretty cool.
And to talk about the Mountain Motor Pro Stock guys in the PDRA, what a cast of characters. You walk through those pits, at least from my media experience, and I've learned that there is absolutely no such thing as a boring Mountain Motor Pro Stock interview.
Oh, no.
There are so many different flavors of personality from, Placino, Elijah Morton, everybody.
Monte Calvo.
Yeah, Monte Calvo. And what's bad is I've been in the pits when you have multiples of them together and Boone in the
Oh, yeah.
And it's like you just sit back and you drink it in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you can't forget the flying meatball.
No, not at all. Now, we're going to hit up one more sponsor here on the show real quick, and then we're going to dive into our last segment. So go to commercial break. We will be right back here on the Dragzine Podcast. Pro Mod racers are dominating the strip with Pat Musi power. Now you can rule the street with a new Edelbrock Musi 555 crate engine. Every 555 is built by Pat Musi in his North Carolina race shop using the best Edelbrock components. These big blocks make up to 723 horsepower on 91 octane pump gas with the reliability that Musi engines are known for. The Edelbrock Musi 555 is available in Pro Flow 4 EFI or carbureted versions and are covered by Edelbrock's industry-leading 24-month warranty. Get full specs at edelbrock.com/Musi-racing. All right, we're back, and we were talking NA racing and whatnot. And, you're talking about your daughter, and racing has really been a family affair for you. You mentioned your dad drug you into the sport like so many of us,
Yep.
Stackers full of junior dragsters, the whole deal. Let's take a step back. Let's take the racing helmet off, put the father hat on. What's it been like for you to see your daughters succeed in the sport? Because they've won races. You can't take any race win away from anybody. What's it been like to see them be successful behind the wheel?
It's one of those deals. Like you almost can't even explain it. It's almost even more satisfying than myself, being successful. Just to see Camry come up through junior dragsters, go down to Frank Holly's, super comp race, top dragster race, IHRA final rounds in top dragster, PDRA wins in top dragster. Then got to team up with Randy Meyer Racing for a season for a few races, and get her first win at Norwalk, get to hold her first Wally at Norwalk. The first place that I won, and actually the weekend she won, we got to share the winner's circle. I won in Pro Mod that weekend too with her. So, that there's been a lot of stuff that you just can't even put a price tag on that, with our family being able to go out there and do this as a family. I wouldn't have it any other way. And like I said, a lot of times I actually get a little bit more enjoyment and satisfaction out of seeing Camry, be successful than my own self.
And does that kind of change the dynamic for you guys as a racing team? Because I guess, the old phrase, too many cooks in the kitchen, but, when you have family, it kind of changes things sometimes, I think, because it can get, that line between family and racing can start to bleed and things can get kind of dicey and spicy in a hurry, right?
Yeah, but for the most part,
respectfully, dicey and spicy.
Yes,
right?
Yes. We're Italian, so everything's spicy and dicey already. No matter what, we could be sitting at home at the kitchen table and it could get spicy and dicey. There's a lot of love and respect between all three of us. My father did it for a long time before me. I did it for a long time before Camry. And I think Camry's got a bright future ahead of her in drag racing. You know, I believe she has, you know, you'll hear crew chiefs say, you know, some people, there's people that drive race cars and then there's race car drivers, you know. And with Camry, you know, being at the racetrack literally from the day that she was born, she's been at a racetrack. I think she has the natural talent to really be a great race car driver. But it's going to take time and it's going to come in time. She can be a really good learner and listener. And it's showed, you know, she's been down to Frank Holly's every time she's wanted to move up. Frank's been a great mentor to her. Actually, she's going down in a couple of weeks to spend some time with Frank again with this car, you know, just to fine tune some things and see how she can, you know, be better. I don't know that I would have stuck with this as long as I had or done it at the level I've done it without family. So it's the family point. The family part of it to me is just as important as the need for speed, if not more important.
And for me, you know, I came from a racing family myself, you know, earliest pictures of me at the track with, you know, my dad in his helmet, you know, and to me, racing, like, it's going to sound weird. It's normal. Like I would, you know, some people go into stick and ball sports as their thing. Like,
yep,
a racetrack literally feels like home.
Absolutely.
It's so hard for people to understand when you first take them to the races that it's almost like you could go to any track and you pretty much know how things are to go and where stuff is. And you're there with like-minded people. And it's hard to not have a good time at a racetrack, especially when you're with family.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I tell people all the time, you know, going to the racetrack is our summer home. You know, that's our vacation spot, you know, so we're just lucky enough to go on vacation and get to drive race cars.
You get to do it multiple times per year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever think in your wildest dreams that your family would be essentially where it is in the racing world now? I mean, you know, you've raced NHRA level pro mod, you know, you guys have won a lot of races. Was this ever on the roadmap, or you just, you know, because some people, I call them planners. They have their big board goals. They're just going to work towards it. And then there's the people that just, they open up the gate and let life happen. You know, where's it been for you?
So it's kind of funny because my dream growing up, you know, being around the racetrack and going racing was actually, my eyes was always on Mountain Motor Pro Stock or Pro Stock. You know, I loved Pro Modified. I watched Pro Modified. I followed it, but I didn't think I would be driving a Pro Mod. You know, I had hoped to someday find a way to get myself into a Pro Stock car. But it just kind of took the path that it took. You know, like I said, you know, my father was always into top sportsman cars, you know, nitrous. Then he had a blown, you know, Pro Mod car. So I think on that end of it, because of my father, I was kind of destined to end up in a Pro Modified car. But I always, you know, prior to that, I always wanted to drive a Pro Stock car.
It's funny that a lot of times you'll see people that, like, there's that line in the path where they go. And a lot of times when like some guys are like, they just follow, like they wanted to bracket race. They started out in that, then they went to top sports and they're like, my goal was to be in a Pro Stock car. And here I am. Some people want to go the fuel car route. And it's interesting to see how some people go those different routes and ways. And they're like, you know, you hear them talk about how they were obsessed with nitro and that's what they wanted to do. And then other guys are like, nope, I just want to, you know, go fast with doors around me.
Yeah. No, I agree. The fuel classes never really did anything for me. I enjoy watching them. I hats off to them. Wasn't my thing. Now my daughter Camry, if she has an opportunity to drive something and she gets the race car, she don't care what it is. She's really enjoying the door car thing now. but up until this season, she had never sat in a door car or driven anything that even on the street, driven a manual car. So it's kind of funny how that, but the opportunity was there. She took it. If the opportunity was there for a pro stock motorcycle, I believe she would get on it.
Cool.
I wouldn't, but my daughter, I believe she would. I do. I believe she would put her butt on a nitro Harley if someone, rolled one up and said, "Here, give this a shot." I don't think she'd want to do a whole season of it, but I think she would. She's that type of a girl that, or that type of a racer that if she gets to race car, it don't matter what it is, she wants to race car.
I don't think that she would physically fit on a nitro Harley, because if you look at
probably not.
The thing is like, I always joke, you can tell a nitro Harley racer versus like a pro stock bike racer just by looking at it. The night under fire this weekend, there were nitrous bikes, turbo bikes, and top fuel bikes there. You could definitely tell the three different riders apart. And it was just, I looked at that, I'm taking the picture. This makes sense now. And again, it comes down to, would I ever do that? Absolutely not. Like, yeah. It's like, you go from mild, medium to super hot if you want to make like a spice comparison between those three classes. And the guys on like the nitrous bikes, they're trying to finesse it down the track. There's a dude there with a turbo bike, which, like not your typical like extended swing arm, XDRA bike. This was like a pro stock motorcycle with a turbo, different level of crazy. Like that thing moved out. Then you got the dudes with the legit nitro Harleys with, the zoomy exhaust coming out directly, between their legs out back. And I'm like, you guys are, I got a picture of that where it looks like just fire shooting out of the human on the bike. I'm like, what makes you think that that's a good time? Like, what's going on between the ears?
Yeah, it's not for me. I can tell you that.
No. And there's people that look at a pro mod that goes, a 560 and say, nope, I'm good. I don't want to be going in something that's trying to move on multi-axes at one time. Now, this is something I always like to ask drivers as well is, would you ever see yourself in a different class? And for something like what about radial racing? Because that's kind of, almost in the same vein, but still pretty gnarly. Is that something you ever thought, maybe we'll try that?
I have considered it, with the way the purses were, we talked about it more than one occasion. The problem for me in this, a lot of people may be like, is he serious? I just don't like the schedule that they run on, like going radial racing. You know what I mean? I would drive a radial car, but the schedule would drive me nuts. Like they don't start till like 4 p.m. and they run till 4 a.m. And then there's nothing to do all day long, like that would drive me absolutely nuts. But as far as, other forms of racing, I'm seriously considering the Mountain Motor Pro Stock thing. It's a serious consideration at this point.
It's very funny when you see someone's reaction the first time going to one of the really big, like, events. We'll call them events because that's what they are.
Yeah.
They're like, how long does this go to? I'm like, till we're told we can't race anymore. And
then they spend a week of testing and qualifying, and right. I mean, like there's like 7 qualifying passes or something.
For some of the classes there are. Now, the Sweet 16 is a little bit more of a controlled explosion, but I've been to some events where legit, I have gotten up at 6 o'clock in the morning to drive to the track, and it started later in the afternoon, and I was back home at 6 a.m. the next day. That is not for everybody.
Yeah, that's not for me.
It makes you appreciate having a rig you can sleep in at the track. I will tell you that much, because the guy that I used to crew for, when he got an RV, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, I don't have to worry about going to the hotel. Like, we park the car and we go to sleep. This is awesome.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think
there's nothing like hanging out at the track too,
Oh, it's
camaraderie.
It's always fun too when you see people get to see what happens after hours at a race for the first time too. I'm like, I'll explain to them, remember, we have to be up early and functioning tomorrow. Just keep that in mind. About to have fun, because there's a lot of fun to be had. But
oh yeah,
my dad always said actions have consequences, and I don't want to hear about it at 8 o'clock in the morning when I'm poking you to get up when we got stuff to do. Ain't gonna fly. You brought this upon yourself. I'm sure you've uttered that phrase a few times.
Oh yeah. I've not only have I uttered it, I've been told it.
Yes. Yeah. Is that where with age comes wisdom, right?
Yeah.
For
sure.
There's two places that I've found that are the worst possible places to be hungover in this known universe: a racetrack and a church on Sunday morning. Those are two places that if you're hungover at them, you are not going to have a good time.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
It's just, again, it comes down to it's like we talked about earlier, the lessons you learn behind the wheel. You're like, I'm not going to do that again. You'll learn these lessons after the fact, and you don't want to end up on some of these Facebook pages or, it's anymore. It's almost like you want to tell people, don't become an internet meme, whether it's what you do on the track or off the track. You can't do that these days, right?
That is a fact.
Now, I always like to have fun with my guests with a final question. I've got a time machine. I've used that for scenarios. I've got unlimited bank account scenarios. I've got putting people in charge scenarios. So for you, Marc, you've had some pretty successful drivers step in between the doors of your vehicles from time to time and have done well. Who is the one dream driver that you would love to see go out and pick up a win for your team if you had to have it happen? You can pick any, I'll open it up. You can be a owner of any kind of vehicle, anything. Where's the person where you want to tap them on the shoulder and say, your job this weekend's to win? What driver, what class?
I'd have to say my daughter Camry in Pro Stock.
That's a very admirable and awesome answer. I dig that. That's that is not taking the easy way out there. I like that. Because
no, absolutely.
Because I'm sure I'll put it out there, when that happens for you, that's going to probably be like that next level experience, isn't it?
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Absolutely. I've been fortunate enough, to see her win in Top Dragster. I've been fortunate enough to see her win in A Fuel Dragster. It's some of the best times that I've had. Like I said, even above and beyond some of my own success. It's great to see her. And I know my father too, getting to see, two generations. It's pretty satisfying for him as well, knowing that, he's the patriarch of this whole deal. And if it wasn't for him, neither one of us probably would have had the opportunities that we've had. So,
and, again, from my media seat, if you will, some of the most bonkers celebrations I've seen on the starting line is a family racing operation like that, when a son or a daughter wins a big event. Like, I get excited about it. Like, I'm having a good time watching all of these people up there lose their mind, and just seeing that moment when the family realizes that they've reached that goal, that moment. Again, it's something you can't put a price on, is it?
Absolutely. No, it's not. I can tell you this, this season here, in Pro Outlaw 632, being the only naturally aspirated car in the class and having to compete against all these nitrous guys, being naturally aspirated, you're at the mercy of the weather conditions, and there's only so much ratio you can throw at something that is limited on horsepower. We can't just, turn up the systems or, it's been a challenge. So just winning a round this season is almost like winning a race. We get lucky and put together 4 round wins one of these weekends. I'll tell you what, the PDRA and the drag racing community has never seen a party like there's going to be.
I could only imagine the fun and adventure that will happen, right? It'll be I will say it'll be a Scott Palmer level celebration, which I think he is set the platinum standard for post-race fun and shenanigans. Not even winning a race, just running up. This man takes like, let's do some throttle laps and let's do it. You know, with that race down at Eddyville, I think it was, with Chris Graves' deal. He put someone in the car and starts throttle lapping a nitro car on a starting line, and someone at the NHRA, I think at that point, was probably having multiple strokes, but Scott's out there just having a good old time. Just, you know, we'll burn this thing down. Yeah, you know, one of the only people I know crazy brave enough to have a nitro-powered door car with the goal of going 300 miles an hour in a door car. Dude's out of his mind, but that's the example
God bless him.
To have fun.
God bless him. Yeah, no, it's all about having fun. I know, you know, we won that deal down there with Alex driving our car for Wes Buck's deal last year. And, you know, Camry was like, he's driving it back. We're driving it back. And Alex and Camry crawled into the car. They drove it back from the winner's circle, you know, doing throttle laps all the way.
And again, you can't put a price on those memories that you make at the racetrack, because I've got it myself, winning events with teams and winning rounds. And it's like, you look back on that and you can't put a price on it. You can't take that away.
Absolutely.
You know, it's all about having a good time, because unfortunately life is a finite thing and you got to enjoy every minute of it. Right?
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. That's how I live my life.
Well, Mark, our time here is coming to a close, and I'd like to give my guests their opportunity to channel their inner John Force and thank all their sponsors and tell people where to find them on social media and rant and rave and do whatever they need, as long as they don't violate the rules we went over to start with. So I'll turn it over to you. The floor is yours, my friend. Tell people who you need to thank, where they can learn more about your racing program, and what you got going on.
Well, first and foremost, Caruso Family Racing needs to thank Wright Trailers. They're a major sponsor of ours. And if you're ever looking for the right trailer at the right price, get a hold of us. We can hook you up and help you out. Also, NGK Spark Plugs, Lucas Oil, VP Racing Fuels. There's so many. The list goes on and on and on. Kings of Vapor, huge part of our program. And, you know, as far as people, Lee White, Hank Jackson have been a huge part of the Caruso Family Racing Pro Mod team. As far as on Camry's deal, Rich Atkins has been a big part of that. The John and Johnny Placino, John Montecalvo. A lot of people have been very instrumental in Camry's program this year. So we're very thankful to them. And we are on Facebook and Instagram as Caruso Family Racing. And you can catch our Caruso Family Racing Cocktails with the Carusos every Tuesday before and after a PDRA race on our Facebook page. So thank you, Brian. We appreciate you having us on, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon and talk about some race wins.
Absolutely. And, you know, before we close things out, I've got to thank the sponsors. Allow me to come on and have a great time with people like you know, Performance Distributors, Airflow Research, ProCharger, Holly, MSD, Flowmaster, Mosier Engineering, Comp Cams, Fast Technology, Edelbrock, Manley, JE Pistons, and Dart. Mark, it was awesome seeing you once again, and I'm sure our paths will cross again in, you know, the 18 months left in the racing season or whatever we've got going on, right?
Right on. I look forward to it, man.
See you soon.
Right on.